All right, welcome back to The Horror with Mike.
And Nate.
On this episode, we are going to be doing a very special tribute, top 5 best films of the late, great Mr. Wes Craven.
He will be missed. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, they're going to be writing papers about him forever.
Yeah. He was not just a horror guy, and outside of his filmmaking, he wasn't really a horror guy whatsoever.
Oh, not at all.
That's just what he was good at.
Right. Yeah, he barely saw movies. He very much goes into how until he was in college, he really only had seen Disney movies. Like me, grew up very strictly, I think he was Baptist, I'm Catholic, wasn't really allowed to watch anything at all. So then he was just working with Sean Cunningham, again, if you guys don't know, the guy who created Friday the 13th. They were working together, got $40,000, and he was like, hey, Wes, make a horror movie. He's like, I don't know how to make a fucking horror movie. And he's like, so I just wrote what I thought was a horror movie. And it turned out to be like earth-shattering and like much more horrible than anyone could ever expect. And he didn't even know he had that darkness inside him, which is cool. I'd like to see more people who aren't horror fans make horror movies.
Before we kick off the list, I wanted to throw out a personal note. I find Wes Craven pretty inspirational, and
Yeah.
I would challenge writers or creators, filmmakers, whatever it is you do, to check out his story, because we're in the in remembrance phase. So we're looking back at his highlights. The guy had a lot of lowlights too. He had a lot of ups and downs. His ups are phenomenal. He definitely had downs, not just creatively, but financially. After making a couple of classics, he was still dead broke, and nobody knew who he was, and he started doing hack work for TV to pay the bills.
Yeah.
He came back, made another classic, made himself relevant, faded away for a long time. As a creator, I find that story, that struggle, it was work, and he had failures, but he's the best example that I know of somebody that had more than one failure and then came back for more than one, what would be the apex of anybody else's career. He had several.
Right.
So just such huge ups and downs. He will be missed as a person more than, at this point in his career, a filmmaker.
Scream was one of the very first horror movies that I ever saw. Yeah, it feels weird to say and almost trivial to say, but it's like, I really do think he was my favorite horror director.
Yeah.
I mean, I've said multiple times that my favorite directing would be Scream. Fucking Quentin Tarantino
Disagrees with you.
Yeah, he anchored it. That's what I think made Scream what it was, is that he anchored it to real life and made the shit intense. When everybody else saw comedy, he saw injecting more Last House on the Left into it and made another classic. So, yeah, he's very, very pivotal to me. And like I said, watch his interviews and stuff. He was a English professor. Mm-hmm. Fucking
he liked
sweetest,
vacationing with his
nicest guy.
wife in Tuscany.
Crazy. But like I said, we could do this all day, and like I said,
Let's get down to the movies.
Yeah, I was like, we need to keep this jovial, because like it's very easy for me to
It should be celebratory, like a wake.
Oh, yeah, all emotional and stuff about him, because he really is pivotal. But anyway, this is a celebration of all the awesome entertainment he gave us. For better or worse, how it made you feel, this is a celebration of all of it. I will go ahead and kick us off at number 5, which would be his return to the Nightmare series with New Nightmare.
Great choice.
Yes.
This is a movie that thematically led up to Scream.
Right.
And
definitely.
I just think it's fascinating, the approach. It really shouldn't work as well as it does.
Yeah, it still is cumbersome. This was one I kept switching this and Shocker out for 5. Shocker is a lot of fun and is really fucking entertaining. You guys should watch it. And this one has a lot of like awkward moments, and I really don't think the horror was that great. But just the fact that he wrote Scream before it was really Scream, and how it worked itself in that when you create something, it can feed on itself and other people. There is a lot of genius work in there.
It's
But you can tell his heart wasn't in horror anymore. It was being more metaphysical, which is what it excels
was clever.
At. Yeah,
and
very
cleverness
clever.
gets in the way of being scary sometimes.
Yeah.
Still, I love the movie.
Oh yeah. And there is scary stuff. Like, I like how the little boy's stuffed animal is like, you never see it, but it's like, it protects him in the dream world, and it has slashes, and it's like, I just think that is such an awesome idea that I was hoping more Nightmare movies would go into. is the power of dreams to come in and battle nightmares. So I thought that was very cool. Plus, Wes Craven, see him act in it. Very cool.
My pick for number 5 may surprise people that it's so low, but Last House on the Left is my pick for number 5.
Sure.
And honestly, it makes the list at top 5 for the legend status. This is, of all of Wes Craven's movies, there are several that I watch fairly regularly, and this isn't one of them.
Right. Yeah, I think I might be one of the few people who does watch this like once a year. Like it's a little hard to get through, but
it's got such impact. You know, it's just it's not a light watch.
Yeah.
It's very involved, very powerful. Even after we've lived through the age of quote unquote torture porn, this movie
is still
it still brings it. My number 5 pick, Last House on the Left, an eternal classic because it's 40 years old.
Oh God, I don't even know, 76 possibly. But one thing that you mentioned that I'm just going to talk about now in case I forget is I do watch Last House a lot. And what's kind of cool, but in a way I guess kind of sucks, but it's conquering demons, is it is very hard to watch. It's probably the third hardest to watch movie I've ever seen, but I've watched it so much that it's lost that. But what's cool about it is now I can see other stuff. Like I appreciate David Hess's music and his performance and the ties to the Virgin Spring, and it's like it doesn't have that visceral. So I can seriously, like on a Saturday afternoon, eat a sandwich and watch fucking Last House on the Left.
That's cool. You can watch it as a film. It's still a movie for me that I don't watch, I experience.
Yeah. So. And I can totally see that. And I do kind of feel bad that I lost that, but there's a lot more to gain, especially if you want to be a filmmaker. So my number 4, fitting enough, is Scream 4. I love me some Scream 4. Thank God Scream 4 came around for a million reasons that I could go on and on about. But his last movie would have been my soul to take.
Well, and his last few movies before that, like including Scream 3, he was not on a hot streak. No. Scream 4 was...
Because he doesn't like horror. It's a shame.
Scream 4 was a return to form for him.
Oh, God, yes.
Now, we're not going to get started on a big Scream 4 thing.
Nope. I could do a whole thing.
Yeah. I know that's a 10 out of 10 for you. I think it's a good movie. I'm not a huge fan, but...
I would say it's a 9 out of 10, just to be specific.
It's definitely... like I said, it's a return to form, and it has some real brutal stuff.
Yeah, it had no reason to be that damn good.
Yeah, and personally speaking, Scream 4 was the only Scream movie that really made sense to me after the first one, because in the second one, what's it about? It's about revenge.
Yeah,
revenge
they got, like I said, they
person?
got drama-y and shit.
The first Scream, which we'll get into later, and the fourth Scream...
spoiler alert.
There is a
universal theme behind the motive.
A chilling motive, like the why. Like who done it is, that's surprising, but then why they done it is unsettling.
Right. And that reminds me of a reason that something will crop up higher than something else is I think a lot of that has to do with the genius of Kevin Williamson. Just on Wes Craven's end of all of that is the dude was old.
Yeah.
And he, like I said, he doesn't necessarily like horror. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. He would say that.
Sure.
But he fucking brought the horror, the comedy, the perfect mixture of the two.
A great representation of what a professional this guy is.
Dude.
His heart wasn't... Scream 4 was that good and his heart probably wasn't in it. But
I think his heart was in it just because of the nostalgia of working with everybody again. But he brings his fucking A game.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that one. Good stuff.
Number 4 for me is The Hills Have Eyes, which this is one of the rare cases where I actually like the remake over the original.
Oh, no one's going to argue with you on this side of the mic.
But I love the original. And, there was 20 years of my life where there was no remake. I spent a lot of time with this being like, this is a great cannibal movie. You know what? And it is. And to this day... I still say, on a regular basis, we're going to eat that baby like a Christmas ham.
I've heard that 3 times, I would say, this week. Problem with me is, like I've always said, Hills Have Eyes remake, I don't remember if I had seen the original first. I probably did, but it erased the memory of that movie. So I only remember watching it after the remake. And, I mean, it cannot be denied for its power Just, it didn't end up on my list because I think even he basically admitted, because he produced the remake, that he didn't quite get it right. So, I like it, but didn't make top 5.
Just like with Last House for me, Last House and Hills Have Eyes are two of his many movies that were so influential. Like, decades later, they're still echoing in movies.
Oh, yeah.
And Hills Have Eyes definitely has that legacy.
And my number 3 would be your number 5, Last House on the Left. I love me some Last House on the Left. I already mentioned quite a bit. This movie, it might sound strange to quite a lot of people, but I have seen this movie probably close to 20 times, if not more. It's one of those movies that I probably watch every year since I saw it. I remember seeing just bits of it on Bravo's 100 Scariest Movie Moments and being like, ugh, I don't know if I want to watch that one. And then made myself watch it, and I was like, holy shit, this is fucking intense. Like, this shit does not shy away from anything. Keep repeating, it's only a movie, it's only a movie. And it is just freaky as shit. And I was one of the first people for the remake because I thought, like Hills Have Eyes, this was a movie that could do with a remake. It's like, you could definitely, like we've talked about with Martyrs, if you remade Martyrs, there's no point in going as violent. So scale down on the violence and explore the story a little bit more, which is kind of what the remake did, but it just showed that Last House it's intense and guerrilla filmmaking.
And it's raw, and that rawness, like, I mean, this is a radically different, but you know, like Blair Witch Project. Both of these movies have, the rawness gives them power. It makes the movie, I don't know, it gives this extra quality that a Hollywood production, for better or worse, simply can't. It simply can't connect on that level.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of what you said. You said something really awesome in, I believe it's our top 5 of all time, which you can find elsewhere on our YouTube page. You said found footage. You called Chainsaw Massacre found footage because I mean, I get what you mean by that. And basically, this was the consumer cameras of their day and age.
Yeah.
Shot how you would shoot a home movie. Yes, it's not technically found footage.
No, we don't want to put anybody off. It's a regular movie for all you found footage haters.
Yeah.
We're just talking about the feeling that you can get from found footage comes across in these movies.
Yeah, exactly. How something like Blair Witch wouldn't work as well if it was polished up.
Right.
And same impact of Chainsaw Massacre, but everyone says Chainsaw Massacre is way more violent than it was. This movie, no matter how violent you've heard it is, you're not ready for it.
No.
So, I know there are a lot of teenagers who listen to this. If you haven't seen it and you're taking our recommendation to watch some Wes Craven you haven't seen, be wary. It is gnarly. And there's some really silly parts. Like, that sticks out to me. That was weird. And the Karate Kid guy's in there. The villain from Karate Kid. I don't know. Anyway, so number 3, Last House on the Left.
Number 3 for me is a movie you haven't seen yet, The Serpent and the Rainbow.
Son of a bitch, why would you do that to me then?
Yeah.
Is it really that good?
Well,
that's one I've been putting off for a rainy day.
When I started thinking about his movies, and because I like a lot of his movies.
Right.
This one stands out as just being different from anything else that he's ever made. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that his other movies are dumb by any means. This movie, it seems a little bit smarter.
Well, I know he didn't write this one.
Yeah, I mean, Anna was adapted from a novel.
Oh,
so,
okay, I didn't know that.
It's based on a true story. It uses historical events like the overthrow in Haiti. It's a zombie movie about actual zombies.
The lore of zombies.
Right, like where we get the idea of zombies.
Is it modern day for the 80s, whenever it was?
No, it was set a little before that. I forget the name. You know, they talk about who is overthrowing who.
Okay.
But
sure.
In the movie, there's a coup, which actually, so it's based on these historical events.
Right.
It's got a great cast. It's
Bill Pullman.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a movie that is, I think, is great for horror fans, but I also think this is one of those Wes Craven fans that would play well to like, oh, I don't like horror, because it's scary, but it's very rooted in reality.
Right.
There seems like there might be a supernatural element.
Okay, say no more, because that's one I was saving for a rainy day. I had
and the visuals are great. And the story.
Well, that's why I turned it off. Is one day I went to watch it just as I was watching everything, and I got through the opening credits, and I was like, nope, this ain't the night for it. And I've waited. And so, Serpent and the Rainbow, strangely, has never come about, and I still might wait because I don't want to compile nail it with
Yeah.
whatever. But
So
I've always heard that's great, and I used to listen to a metal song that used samples from it, so I know I'm going to hear that shit.
And also, part of it might be a little bit. I saw this movie in the theater when it first came out, and it's
When did it come out?
It's a great movie memory. Not too long after Nightmare, because I remember there are some dream sequences in the movie, and at first I was like, oh, dream sequences again. But they're radically different from a Nightmare on Elm Street dream sequence.
When you say, I think I'm honing in on, it's a very, and no disrespect, it's a very mature film.
Yeah.
I get what you mean.
As opposed to Last House and Hills Have Eyes, which are just like go for the throat horror movies.
Right.
This is a different kind. Maybe you'd say a little more refined.
Yeah, just a little more mature. I know, and he does. I don't mean that, and he doesn't mean that in any kind of derogatory way. His movies are mostly either entertainment or go for the throat.
Yeah,
and I haven't seen Music of the Heart.
And
I need to.
And I guess this is a good time to say that us putting these movies in order is really kind of arbitrary.
Oh, yeah.
It's a great way to talk about the ones we love. Who's to say the legacy of this movie is more than that movie?
A little behind the scenes for you guys. We just do it in top 5 order. It gives us 1, structure, and 2, people click on top 5 stuff a little bit more often. So if you're having trouble with your channel, all arbitrary.
All right, so that's my number 3, Serpent and the Rainbow.
Number 2, now, I was going to say obviously, but it might surprise you that it's not actually number 1, but Scream goes at number 2 for me.
Okay, and let's just get this out of the way. Scream is my number 2 pick.
What would be your reason then?
The reason it's number 2 and not number 1?
Well, okay, that might be a bit of a leading question.
Okay, well, no, I know specifically the reason that this is number 2 above all these other great movies that we talked about.
Okay, there you go. There's a good way of putting it.
In the career of any filmmaker, but let's just talk about horror filmmakers.
Mm-hmm.
If you can make a movie like a true classic with such impact that it changes
culture,
it changes horror movies, and all horror movies that come after it reflect what had happened in this.
Yep.
Now, Craven did it twice in his career, and Scream was the second time he did it. Now,
I get chills, man.
Most directors don't even do it once. Even a lot of the great horror directors don't even do it once. And this motherfucker did it twice. The difference between 1 and 2 is just personal preference, but Scream it immediately changed slasher movies and horror movies in general. Automatically, it became weird if characters didn't call out the weirdness.
Yeah, there was a backlash, and I think a lot of people still focus on the backlash maybe a little bit too much, but what the fuck ever. It is a work of utter genius. It is a true 10 out of 10 movie. Like Mad Max we talked about, I can give you things that are wrong with Scream more than I could ever tell you what's great about it. There's just too much that's good, and it's like those weird little bits of in the background where the killer's dressed.
Yeah.
Like those 2-3 parts are like missteps. But other than that, and like I mentioned earlier, Tarantino said he tethered it to reality. I think that's what made it so fucking intense. This shit predated Columbine, which, not that it's like a cultural thing, but in my mind, I was the age where it was like Columbine happened when I was in 9th grade. It was a really big deal, and all I could think was Scream told us this was going to happen.
Yeah.
I have said this before, and I will say it, that Wes Craven's directing in Scream beats out Bill Friedkin's for The Exorcist for the best directing of a horror movie ever, and it's my second favorite directed movie of all time. But yeah, and it made slashers legitimate, and this is one of the best things that can be said about it, and this has to do with Kevin Williamson quite a bit more. That's why it doesn't make number 1 for me, even though it's like my favorite horror movie basically of all time, is because he didn't write it too. Mm-hmm. And that's the only, this is difficult as shit, but he didn't fully create it. That's the only reason. But everything he did with it, fucking perfect. The first 10 minutes, Hitchcock would be fucking proud.
Yeah.
Scream is amazing. My number 2, your number 2. So,
number 1.
We all know where this is going.
Yeah.
It was inevitable.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Original. The classic.
This wins out because this would not exist without Wes Craven having his mom meeting his dad. We would not have Freddy. We would not have this movie. The behind the scenes of how he came up with all the intricacies of the character. All fascinating. Watch it. I've watched it a billion times. Go on, sir, because I know this is your shit right here.
I mean, it's funny you say that about his mom meeting his dad. Several movies that are on our list, had he not made Nightmare on Elm Street and gotten this fame out of it, had Freddy not taken on a life of its own, he
Huge.
never would have gotten older
Freddy
and
is
wiser
damn near
about the
face.
business and come up with New Nightmare, which led to him, be doing such great work on Scream. It shaped what would come in his career, it shaped horror movies.
Yeah, he created Bob Shea. He created New Line, which created Lord of the Rings. Like, New Line was the house that Freddy built, and if you were a horror fan in the 80s, 90s, possibly even the 2000s, it started to fuck around with after Blade was so big, or in 7, that was the horror home. And a lot of people talk shit about it, but those were my golden years of being a kid. I love me some New Line horror. Created Freddy. Freddy is, next to like Jaws and Jason, the face of horror movies.
Well,
he created the fucking
and
face.
Because Jason doesn't talk, he's the voice.
And neither does Jaws doesn't talk either. He's the voice.
Horror. Friday the 13th,
possibly the
Halloween slasher movies were all over the place. They were crazy. Wes took something that was already growing stale, the slasher movie genre at the time.
Yeah, it really was.
And gave it the simple twist of a legitimately good story, legitimately good actors.
And think about what it was uphill battling at that moment of slashers too. Think about it like this: that it came out the same year as Friday the 13th, the final chapter. Not only had those been huge, what else could possibly beat them? They had run out of gas and were going down.
Right.
And this came out in the midst of that downfall and completely
proved
itself.
It
and
didn't
it's
just
scary as
It didn't
shit.
just save the studio.
Johnny Depp, fuck, you could go on
it
and on. It
rejuvenated horror for a decade because now slashers had an extra layer. They could, 2 extra layers because they could be supernatural and they can have personality.
Were there any good, other than the sequels, offshoots of that? I haven't seen Bad Dreams, but I heard that was...
not good.
Well.
But, if we're talking offshoots...
I just meant fantasy offshoot.
Yeah,
slasher.
just because,
Shocker, funny enough, is probably one of the best.
Things like Child's Play and Leprechaun are begat by Freddy. What Freddy became, the wisecracking killer.
And I do love all those.
But that style was just emulated to other crazy characters. We're not even going to get around to talking about the movie, just the legend of the movie.
Like I said, we could do a fucking commentary on some of these movies because there's just so much to talk about. Let alone, here's just a little bit. If you're the one person out there who doesn't know this backstory somehow, he came up with the idea. He was a little kid. He was in his room. He heard someone singing outside of his window. He looked down, and this old man dressed as Freddy basically was looking up at him. And so he hides, and he says he waits for a good long time. Looks, and the guy's still staring right up at him, smiles, and walks into his apartment building. His parents had to go downstairs, and it was just a bum. But he was like, the fact that someone could take so much joy in terrorizing a child, that's just one of the really good stories he has. He's a big influence on what I would consider my writing to another level, in the way that when you hear him talk about stuff, he gets very metaphysical. And he showed me that it's okay to, I used to be like, oh, that's all that hogwash, poppycock bullshit. Theme comes later, subtext comes later. But he built from subtext up, and which sometimes doesn't work.
Being metaphysical like that, in this case, the reason Nightmare is number one, the reason it's one of the greatest horror films of all time, is that it's universal. No matter if it's dubbed into your language, it doesn't matter what country you're in, it doesn't matter your race or how much money you have. We all dream, we all sleep, we all have nightmares. We all have something that's in the shadows that freaks us out, either a little or a lot. These are universal themes that make this movie timeless and scary now, scary when it first came out, when I was,
like I said,
12.
we don't even get to go into how scary it is, but you guys already know how scary it is.
And also, we wanted to get to a couple of honorable mentions.
Oh, shit, you're right. Okay, so number one, of course, was Nightmare on Elm Street. So, some honorable mentions. Nightmare.
Was New Nightmare. That's definitely one of my strong honorable mentions.
Yeah.
Shocker.
Yeah, Shocker's pretty awesome.
Shocker is it's endlessly entertaining to me.
No, it's bad.
It's dumb in the best possible way. It's got tons of action. The pacing is bananas.
Oh, yeah, it really is.
A lot of the one-liners just fall flat, but
that good?
It moves so fast. If there's a bad moment, they're just rocketing on to the next kill.
And one thing I like about... I can't actually say this. If you haven't seen Shocker, watch it. A twist happens within the first 25 minutes that he becomes kind of notorious for in his early and later movies, Tina and what's her name, Mary, and blah blah, that I was like, holy shit, he still got me with that same fucking trick. And it's hardcore, too, to take in such a fun movie.
Shocker is a great example of how he can take a script that's...
and still scare you.
Yeah,
but that's the only part that's really scary. The rest of it is that good, fun, 90s universal horror that I have a special place for, which was Child's Play 2, 3... Dr. Giggles, all those silly universal horror. Love it.
And Scream 2 and Scream 4 are both honorable mentions for me as well.
Scream 3, he does. Scream 2, yep, very, very good.
Yeah, Scream 2 is good, and so is Scream 4.
One thing I wanted to point out is that him, as a producer, he still has a movie coming out that he guided his protege called The Girl in the Photographs, which should be coming out sometime soon. It's really intriguing. They say inspired by Scream, so that's good for me. It's about straight off the bat, two serial killers, and at their kills, they leave a picture of some girl. Should be a mystery, should be involving. Probably will be coming out sooner or later, just to, no offense, cash in on this.
Right.
So hopefully they don't rush it out, but hopefully we get it very soon.
What did we leave off the list? Is there anybody out there that's like super pissed that we didn't talk about Vampire in Brooklyn?
I haven't seen Vampire in Brooklyn.
Or Swamp
People Under
Thing?
the Stairs I like.
People Under the Stairs I like.
Swamp Thing was pretty bad.
Yeah. Vampire in Brooklyn, you know what? I gotta say...
It's not as bad.
It's interesting.
Okay.
It's such a style clash, because he was trying his hand at comedy.
Yeah, I would watch it.
It's an Eddie Murphy vehicle, where this was before Nutty Professor, I think.
Yeah, it was.
But this was Eddie Murphy putting on a fat suit and playing like 5 different characters throughout the movie.
Okay, I want to see this then.
So it's...
That's what I'll watch, because I was looking for something, but I want to hold off on Serpent, so I'll watch Vampire in Brooklyn. If I'm ever going to like it, it would be this month. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I can't tell you how funny it is or how scary it is, but it's interesting. You know? You never thought you'd see a Wes Craven, Eddie Murphy movie.
Right.
So
that's good to me. I still haven't seen Music of the Heart. I probably will give that a try one of these days. I don't know.
You know what I've been wanting to do? He directed 5 episodes of The Twilight Zone.
Oh, yeah, from the 80s, yeah.
And Twilight Zone's a pretty good brand, so I'd like to see what Wes did with it. I think I've probably seen a couple before.
Yeah,
but
let me know, because I definitely would like to see that too. He acted in, John Carpenter directed him in Body Bags, which if you haven't seen that, cool horror anthology from the 90s. And yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up at this point.
We could go on all day, but we want to know what you have to say. Mm-hmm. Give us your thoughts, feelings, your favorite movies, or favorite moments, Wes did a lot of different stuff. Yeah. You can get at me personally. I'm on Twitter and Facebook at NateFlix with an X. Together, we're on YouTube as Fright Flicks, and you can find us on social media platforms, Twitter and Facebook, at Fright Flicks. That's Flicks.
Yes. We'll be back with more Scream-related videos, top 5s, all types of good stuff. Keep us on your watch list here on The Horror. Later on, guys.